What's going on, Buffs Nation? I hope you're all having a wonderful weekend. In this video, I wanted to discuss a very interesting idea that I heard when I was on Jason Watkins' Hall of Fame Media show yesterday, and that's coming from KSU insider Tim Fitzgerald. I'll link all of their information here in the description for you to check out. If you're interested in more Big 12 content, definitely go and follow both of them. So I'll link that in there. But Tim Fitzgerald brought up a very interesting idea on that show yesterday when it comes to conference realignment and maybe the pitch that the Big 12, Brett Yormark, can make in order to convince Oregon to set aside hopes for the Big 10 right now and consider maybe coming to the Big 12 conference, joining CU and doing that instead of jumping to the Big 10. So I wanted to get into that. Of course, before I get started, I would appreciate a like on the video. That's going to help push this out to other Buffs and college football fans. And of course, as always, let me know what you think in the comments. I'll do my best to try and respond to every single comment, but I definitely do read every single comment. So appreciate all the love and support that we got going on here at David Talks Buffs. Now I'm going to do my best to communicate this pitch that Tim talked about yesterday, but I'm going to do it in my own style, right? I mean, this is David Talks Buffs. Have you seen the new Air movie that came out a few months ago? It's about Air Jordan, the inception of Air Jordan, the pitch that Nike made to Michael Jordan to get him to consider the small entrepreneurial shoe company instead of some of the big brands at the time, Converse and Adidas, who were dominating the basketball shoe market at the time. And they need to come with a different approach to a shoe deal that would entice Michael Jordan to bet on them, to bet on the smaller startup company instead of going with the certainty of those two dominating brands in Converse and Adidas. Now, what was that pitch comprised of? Well, first, it centered around a shoe that was completely contrary to everything else in the NBA. You had to have shoes in the NBA that were primarily white. That was part of the league policy. And if they went over that, I think it was 51% white, if they brought that lower than that, then Michael Jordan would be fined every game for wearing those sneakers that were too colorful. So what did they do? They decided, you know what? We'll take a bet. We want to create buzz. We want to create press. We want Michael Jordan to stick out compared to everybody else on the court. So we're going to make him a shoe that is quote unquote banned by the NBA. We'll cover his fines and he'll wear it. Also, they were the first shoe company to give an athlete coming into the NBA a percentage of the sales. I believe it was 10% of every sale of shoe went back to Michael Jordan. They were expecting to just do a few million in sales. That's what they were hoping. And obviously, you know that once Michael Jordan decided to take a bet, because Nike was the only brand that was giving him a direct portion of the sale compared to Adidas and Converse that were essentially just paying him flat fees for his likeness, and they were going to make the profits as the shoes sold. But really what it did was it created a partnership between the brand Nike and Michael Jordan. And you saw, the billion-dollar empire that it built for Nike as well as Michael Jordan. And I think right now with the Big 12, I've talked about this a lot this week, the conference kind of has this entrepreneurial feel to it. There's a lot of brands and programs that have been behind the shadows of a program like the University of Texas or the University of Oklahoma or USC or, really the entire conference of the Pac-12 with how bad we've been, right? The last 12, 13 years, of course. But you have a lot of brands that are now, that they have the opportunity to come in the spotlight from behind the curtain and really prove themselves in being a big time college football brand. And Brett Yormark, the commissioner, is taking this entrepreneurial approach, trying different things to make the conference stick out, bringing points of differentiation, possibly using the prestige and the tradition of the SEC and the Big Ten against them, maybe moving forward, where this can have a little bit more fun to it. It's okay to break the rules. We don't exactly have a big brand but behind us anymore, and that allows us to kind of play around with different ideas and tactics in terms of branding, in terms of how they're going to build the conference, how they're going to promote it, right? And that's why Coach Prime and Brett Yormark are going to be such a powerful duo, but I digress. That same approach needs to be given towards the University of Oregon because they have had their eyes set on the Big Ten for quite a while now, and I think that they would be a great fit with the Big Ten. And if they get a Big Ten invite, I mean, you got to take that, right? But Tim Fitzgerald brought up this idea. But what if Brett Yormark pitched to the University of Oregon's largest booster and donor, Phil Knight, the owner of Nike, that we could sell him, in a sense, the naming rights of the conference. It's time to move on from the Big 12. We have more than 12 teams. There's a negative connotation with it that it will always kind of be less than the Big 10 and the SEC. Why don't you just go ahead and sell the naming rights to Phil Knight? This can be the Nike conference. Most of the schools are Nike branded schools already. You have a couple. I think it was possibly Kansas that's with Adidas, and I think there's one other school, maybe it's Texas Tech, that's with Under Armour. And you could kind of fix those deals to make sure that every school that comes into this conference is going to be a Nike branded school. That's going to bring in more revenue for Nike. And if you didn't know this, Phil Knight gives a ton of money to the university every year, and there's an endowment for Nike to continue to give to Oregon after his passing, and hopefully that isn't for a long time, obviously, but you can kind of incentivize the University of Oregon and Phil Knight to consider coming to the Big 12 because they can provide some different financial opportunities for Nike and for the university that the Big Ten and the SEC wouldn't offer. They would not offer up the naming rights to their conference names because of the tradition and prestige that those names hold, right? And of course they would have more money to offer eventually, but maybe there's a way in which we can come up with a deal in which Oregon gets that 31.7 million from the TV deal, but there's also more business and financial opportunity brought in for Nike, and therefore Oregon, for Oregon through Nike, if they were to reach some deals for the entire conference that brought in more business for Nike. And I love that idea of renaming the conference something new. Let's go ahead and partner with a brand like Nike, give them an incentive to continue to push this conference, continue to push the promotion of its stars, of its athletes. You see more NIL deals coming in for the rest of the conference, for the University of Oregon, possibly when you have a deal like this set in place. But doesn't that just have a nice ring to it? The Nike Athletic Conference or something around that. And maybe some people might be upset with this that are fans of schools that are already in the Big 12, but I mean, I like kind of having this no rules approach, or being we're not being afraid to think outside the box. And you can't be worried about Oregon jumping ship maybe in 6-7 years for the Big Ten. Maybe we make this enough of a home in which they're able to express themselves, in which they're able to bring in more business for Nike in that sense, give them that sort of entrepreneurial autonomy that they wouldn't be able to get being a member of another conference. It's a really interesting idea, but I would love to have Oregon here. You cannot focus on the possibilities of what could happen in 10 years with a Big Ten invite. Focus on the now. They're a big time brand. They're way bigger of a brand than CU is right now. They would be, a flagship school coming in here, a flagship brand opportunity. Brett Yormark has talked about that so much. He wants to find brands that are on the rise. Obviously, Oregon has proven themselves, and they're continuing to rise. They'd be a fantastic addition to this program or to this conference. I would love to see it. So, I want to know what y'all think. Is that a creative way in which we can incentivize maybe Oregon to look past the prestige and the financial opportunity that's there with the Big Ten if an invite does come, to maybe look ahead at the Big 12, seeing that they would have some opportunity from an entrepreneurial and autonomy standpoint. So y'all let me know what you think in the comments. Again, I really appreciate every single one of you. Please let me know what school or what team you're coming from if you found my channel from anything Big 12. And as always, go Buffs.